Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Tundra Cast. Once again, I'm your co-host Jaden Shergill. We got a Quarrel, got Jacob, and for the first time, we got Mr. Patrick on the podcast. And we have a very special guest coming a bit later today. He's a Canucks writer. I'm pretty sure he owns the site Gino Hard, and that's Mr. Brady Trettenero. Sorry if I butchered that, but he's going to be coming on a bit later. But there's one topic we all kind of wanted to discuss before we get into the guest, and that's TSN Bell Media laying off thousands of employees like a couple days after Bell Let's Talk Day. This is just after Bell got $100 million in relief funds from Canada, and I mean it's not a smart move on their end, firing these guys. Guys like Dan O'Toole and all these hardworking guys. So, honestly, I might have to boycott Bell now because I just don't agree with their decision on this.
Bell, let's talk. Let's talk about the people who you made depressed after firing them.
Exactly. Quarrel, do you have any thoughts on this, Jacob?
All I have to say is it's very petty of what they did.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some type
Absolutely.
I'm sure there's some type of money thing behind it, which I mean, it's business.
Yeah.
What you gonna do?
Yeah, true. But they did tell them that they wouldn't have to fear losing their jobs, but they ended up losing their jobs.
And Bell didn't tell any of the employees that they were being let go, which is irresponsible on their part.
That for sure.
Yeah.
There was nothing good about that.
Always happy to talk hockey and talk about the Canucks.
Great. So, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah, I mean it's been a crazy little season for Vancouver. So I mean,
Yeah.
that part hasn't been all that fun. I mean, I guess it's entertaining when a team is struggling, but yeah, I mean, it hasn't been good to watch.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll get started if that's all right with you.
Yeah, for sure.
So I guess we'll just start off with, what are your thoughts on the Canucks' season so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's been disappointing for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you come into a year, and especially with the run that they made last year in the playoffs and the return to play, I think people were thinking that they would make some noise this season in the All Canadian North, but there's no real way around it. It's just been it's been a disappointment. I mean, they're just stringing together losses now. They can't put together consistently good play, and they pretty much just beat up on the Senators, right? So it's definitely been disappointing.
Yeah. So like, obviously, they had a really bad streak against the Leafs, which I mean, they're a good team, right? But
Yeah.
At the same time, you would hope that they're still kind of trying at least.
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it. I think that's what the fans are looking for at the end of the day. Like, you look at the Canadian division and there's some really good teams here, right? Like it's a tough division. So I think the fans are just mostly upset by the fact that the effort just hasn't been there on some nights, and it was there last night in the final game of the 3-game set, but they just didn't get the result. But in a lot of these losses, it just didn't look like they wanted to win that much, and I think that's what hurts the most is when the effort isn't there. So I mean, hopefully they can build off this last performance where the effort was there, because I think if you can take some positives if you're losing, but you're still playing well, right? And you're just, you got this McDavid, Matthews, you got these elite talent in the division. As long as you're just like putting in a really good effort, I think that's going to satisfy the fans.
And I think one of the biggest reasons why the Canucks are kind of down 6-10 or 6-11 in the season so far is because they lost a lot of veterans. They lost a lot of leaders in Chris Tanev and Jacob Markstrom, who had a really good relationship with Elias Pettersson.
Yeah.
And it just looks like it's taken a hamper on the team.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, those are key guys in the room, I think, and obviously they got previous relationships with the players, and that's probably hurting. I think you lose Markstrom, as you mentioned, and Tanev, and then but also Toffoli and Stetcher. So, I mean, you would have liked to see maybe, the management group find a way to just bring like at least one of those guys back. I think that's what's disappointing. And yeah, I think it does have an effect. But at the same time, you look at like, the best teams are the teams that are able to deal with some offseason losses and just keep going, with the main core and stuff. But it definitely hurts when you're losing your MVP goalie and some other key pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one part I did want to talk about. It's like the goaltending issue, and
Yeah.
Thatcher Demko, he had a really good playoff run, that little spurt. Obviously, Holtby used to be a Vezina goaltender, dropped off now. So, do you think there's any hope, really?
Yeah, I think there is, because at least the way I looked at it is with the contract that Markstrom was going to be looking for to return to Vancouver, it was going to get pricey. And looking at his age, and you've got this guy, this Demko, who's still only 25, right? So in goalies also, they seem to mature a little bit later than skaters. And when you look at what Demko did in that in the return to play, it was just outstanding against Vegas there. And you thought, it's probably the right move. It sucks to lose a goalie as good as Markstrom, but with the salary that he's looking for and his age, it might be the smart move to rely on Demko in the future. And I think the key here is the Holtby part, because that was going to kind of make Demko's transition a little easier. And Holtby hasn't quite played up to I guess the Canucks are looking for him to return to those glory days, as you talked about.
Well, you obviously mentioned those wins against the Ottawa Senators, and I mean, I won't say that they looked amazing, obviously, but because the Ottawa Senators are really not that great of a team. But do you think, like, Coach Travis Green, what do you think he's really looking for, like, Vancouver Canucks to improve on?
Yeah. So I touched on the effort part. I think that's a huge part of it. They just want to be, just work hard every night, right? Like, look like you can compete with every team in the division. And then also, I think the defensive structure is something that's going to need improvement, because it was masked a little bit last year because you had Markstrom bailing them out. Like, they weren't a good defensive team last year, and they're not a good defensive team this year, and they don't have Markstrom. But so that's highlighted. But I think at the end of the day, they just showed against the Leafs in that final game that they can compete with them. They're right there. They just get the bounces or whatever. But I think that's what Travis Green wants, is he just wants this team to compete every night and just put up a fight until the finish line, because it's a tight division and you never know how it's going to shake out.
Do you think the Canucks, if the goaltending situation just continues to be out of control, could they bring up a guy like Mikey DiPietro, you think?
Yeah, it's possible. I think that's kind of more of a last resort type of thing, just because, if you're going to throw, we saw what kind of happened with DiPietro when he got thrown into the fire. He just didn't fare well. He gave up like eight goals in the two starts he's had in the two appearances he's had in the NHL. And that's rough, right? So you want to make that transition as smooth as possible. And I think, the Canucks, obviously, they paid for Holtby's services, and, they're going to have to rely on him to return to form. And I mean, it's not like he's like nearing the end of his career or anything. He's still got a lot of years left. And I think it's possible for him to return to that goalie that he was only a couple years ago. I know he's going to work hard with the goaltending coach, Ian Clark, here in Vancouver, and hopefully try and rediscover his game. But he just hasn't quite been up to standard. But I think, only in a last resort will you see Vancouver call up someone to replace one of these guys.
So I thought we'd just move away from the Canucks for a second.
Yeah.
Brian Burke and Ron Hextall were just hired by the Pittsburgh Penguins. You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I just thought that was kind of a bit of a bold move. I think, the Hextall thing was being talked about, but Brian Burke kind of took me by surprise there. But I think at the end of the day, it's a good move for Pittsburgh to bring in Ron Hextall because of his experience and kind of what he's done. And I think this team, there's still a window, right? Because you've still got Crosby and Malkin playing still at a very elite level, right? So I think this group still feels like, okay, let's give it a shot here in this season, see how far we can go. And then if not, these are the guys that are going to be in place to shape this team for the future. So I think it was a good move.
You know, especially Burke, who's been around the game since forever, you know, just to have, you know, experience for that president of hockey ops job. I mean, the Penguins kind of need it. The Jim Rutherford experiment was kind of up and down, and now the Penguins actually have some stability in there, and they could win 2 more cups in the next 3 years because of these guys.
Yeah, I think they needed this kind of move. Like there's something this organization, you know, has been underperforming a little bit, and especially saw it in the playoffs last season. So I'm excited to see what he does. I think, you know, Hextall and Burke, they both have potential. You know, just watching Burke on Sportsnet, you can see he's got some good insight into the game. So I think it's a good move, and I think, you know, Pittsburgh, they still have the talent to contend, and this could be the type of thing that kind of, you know, gets the team going.
And
oh yeah, sorry, go ahead, Chet.
Sorry, you can go.
All right, well, Brian Burke, I myself am a Leafs fan, and I know that he's brought in guys like Nazem Kadri and Morgan Riley, and not the greatest draft classes, or in Morgan Riley's case, of course. Do you think that he's going to be a big part of, you know, building up that kind of diminished Pittsburgh prospect pool if obviously they're not able to win, or even if they are able to win?
Yeah, I think he's definitely going to have a role in that. You know, we kind of know what he looks for in players, and what you know, the kind of teams that he likes and the kind of players that he gravitates to. And I think he'll definitely bring that into Pittsburgh, because I think, you know, that when you look at their roster, you know, it's a lot of talent. But it's not maybe necessarily the type of the current team doesn't necessarily fit, I think, what we've learned that Brian Burke likes. So I think he's definitely going to have an input into it, and a lot of it is just going to depend, I think, on what happens this season with Pittsburgh, if they go and make a run, or if not. It's going to really depend on what happens with this team moving forward.
And just speaking on the management side of things, you know, obviously we were just talking about the Canucks a couple moments ago. I'm just bringing it back to that aspect. I mean, if this also continues, Jim Benning, like he has to be on the hot seat. I mean, he even admitted that he had time or didn't have time to sign Tyler Toffoli, and they had the cap space.
Oh, you know? Yeah, he's definitely, I think, on the hot seat. I mean, yeah, that's a tough quote when you hear something like that. Because I think Toffoli was the one guy I thought that they could have definitely brought back. So that's tough. And definitely, if, you know, if things keep trending in this direction, someone's getting canned, it might be easier, you know, for someone like a Travis Green, you know, the coach, to be the fall guy, even though I don't think he's really responsible for much of this. But I think if it keeps trending in this direction, Benning's definitely on the hot seat. You know, he's had some ups and downs, and lately, you know, they've been more down. So I think if it keeps trending in this direction, he'll be on the hot seat.
And I mean, who would be potential replacements? You know, would Mike Gillis entertain a return to Vancouver?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even really put too much thought into who could possibly step into that role. I mean, I think, I mean, I don't know about Gillis in particular, but I mean, I think when you look at the candidates that were interested or possibly interested in that Pittsburgh role, there was a pretty long list. So I think they wouldn't they would be able to find somebody suitable, but I don't think, you know, that the Canucks are necessarily looking to move on from Benning. It's more of just, if, you know, this keeps continuing this trend and maybe they have a really bad season, that they're going to have to look to make a significant move.
Right.
And about Green, there were a lot of rumbles, and I'm not sure if any of it is true, that, if the Canucks aren't playing with effort, it may be because they're not enjoying playing under their head coach. Is there any validity to that?
Yeah, I don't believe so. I mean, you see it a lot with I mean, with other teams and stuff where, the coach just gets the blame for the player's performance on the ice. But when you look at how well the Canucks were playing under Green, in the return to play, I mean, it's just a completely different team that we've seen in the early goings, and I don't think you can necessarily point the finger at the coach for that. I know it was tough. It's tough for Green. He's trying to get a contract extension, and that might not happen, and that could play a role in it. I know Green probably wants to be in Vancouver, but it might not work out that way. I know the Seattle Kraken are looking for a coach, so I mean that would be some type of story that would spark the rivalry right there. But I mean, I don't think the players have a problem playing for Green. I don't really have an explanation for the effort that we've seen in the early goings.
So about the Canucks again and the management. So we know how Jake Virtanen, he has been very disappointing this season, scoring only 1 goal in 12 games so far. And the last couple of days, there have been a couple of talks about a potential trade involving him. What are your thoughts on that? And could the Canucks win a deal with trading him?
I don't know if they could win a deal at this point just because of his value is probably at an all-time low right now, just based on his production this season. But I've been a Virtanen fan since he entered the league. I've always thought he had decent potential, just given his size and his power forward ability. It's just about him being able to put it together on a consistent basis. And yeah, I mean, 1 goal in 12 games this season just isn't good enough. I do think, like, for a player like Jake, I think, like, because we've seen it so many times, like, he's 24. He could probably use a fresh start, and I think he could probably be great with another team and kind of slot in somewhere where maybe, the media focus isn't as much as it is in Vancouver, and he'd probably find success. But I know the Canucks are going to be hard pressed to win that trade, just because of where his value is right now. So I mean, I know that he could get moved at some point this season, but whether or not the Canucks are going to win the trade, that's probably not going to happen.
And could you see a potential fit with maybe like a guy like Sam Bennett, who's been in rumors for a couple of weeks, or a guy like Victor Mete, who would help the Canucks defense?
Yeah, I think both those players that you listed would be solid pieces. I think the one thing you have to consider is, with this whole Canadian division and like the protocols and all of that, it makes it hard to trade outside of your division, because then you got like a 14-day quarantine process and all of that. So that's another factor. So when you're thinking of trading within the division, which is probably the way to go, none of these teams, like the Habs or the Flames, are going to want to help the Canucks, so it's got to be a trade that's going to be like mutually beneficial. And Bennett's definitely a guy who could use a fresh start, and Mete as well. So I could see a trade involving those players. I don't know if it would be a direct 1-for-1 though, but I could see something like that going down.
Once Hughes and Pedersen's entry level deals come up, how do you think Vancouver will handle that?
Yeah, I mean that's tough, because you think like this is the time when you need to kind of capitalize on these players' value, right? Is when they're on their entry level deals. That's when you need to really kind of ice teams that can compete. And unfortunately, with the Canucks, they got locked into some really bad contracts in the bottom six and stuff. That's making it tough. So I mean, I do think the Canucks cap situation is going to be very interesting to watch, because once these guys you can't really say that they're going to play hardball with any of these guys because of how valuable both Hughes and Pedersen are. So it's going to be fascinating to watch it unfold. I know that there are some players that the Canucks can possibly move on from at kind of that same time when Pedersen and Hughes become, their entry level comes up, because I know that's also when Brandon Sutter, his contract's going to expire, Tanner Pearson, Edler, and Ben. So I think like these two players are so important that they're going to find a way to sign them. But it's going to be tough with the Canucks cap situation.
So the expansion draft, obviously it's coming up in not too long now. So what do you expect gets taken from the Canucks? How does it affect them?
Yeah, it's. I think like it's going to be the main thing for Vancouver is they want to protect the core, right? So they're going to protect the key pieces. The Pedersens, the Bessers, the Hughes, and ideally Thatcher Demko. So that means, you're going to hopefully the Canucks are going to be, picking from, the Kraken, sorry, are going to be picking from a list of exposed players that the Canucks could potentially afford to lose and not really be too concerned about it. I don't think there's really anybody on that list that you're going to be like, oh, that's a huge loss. I think, in goal is the interesting one, because it looks like that could be Braden Holtby, just because they're going to, protect Demko, the younger guy, and Holtby could be the guy that moves on. But I think for the Canucks, they're in a pretty good situation, and the fact that their untouchables are going to be protected for this draft, and they don't really have to worry too much about who the Kraken are going to take.
Do the Canucks go 4-4-1 for the expansion draft? Because they're going to protect Besser, they're going to protect their captain Horvat, they're going to protect Miller and Pedersen, and there's a couple of guys on defense that it's kind of like a must. It's kind of like a lock. Ulavy, Schmidt, Myers. Would they go 7-3-1, or would they go 4D, 4 forwards?
Yeah, that's hard to say as of right now. I think you're going to just kind of see how the season plays out, and just see how each player performs for the rest of the year to kind of gauge their value and stuff. So I think it's just kind of a wait and see game. It's kind of hard to call at this point, this far out, but those kind of monitor. I could kind of see it going each way. You mentioned there are some key pieces on the blue line that they're going to want to protect, but at the end of the day, really the key guy that they want to protect on that blue line is Quinn Hughes. So it's going to be, I think, just evaluate as the season wears on and see where the priority lies.
All right, and just speaking about Seattle right now, you kind of just briefly talked about it, but Vancouver's had some games against Calgary where they get heated. Even in kind of recent years, they've kind of built up a kind of the hate for Edmonton, but Seattle's going to be something else for that team. The both fan bases are going to be passionate, and do you think this could be one of the biggest rivalries of the 2020s?
I think so. I think you nailed it on the head. It's going to be great. I think I'm really looking forward to it. Especially I think you can add to the rivalry if, like I mentioned, like the Kraken were to like start off with a bang or something by stealing somebody from Vancouver, but whether that's coaching or players or whatever. But I think it's going to be a great rivalry for Vancouver, because they had like the rivalries with Boston, and then Chicago, playoff rivalries, and then as we've seen in the Canadian division, they've developed some rivalries with the Alberta teams and stuff. But I don't think they right now really have that like one like huge rivalry. But given the geography and stuff, I could definitely see it developing with the Crack, and I think it's going to be fantastic to watch.
So I know obviously, it's COVID things are really different, and we've pretty much asked this to every single reporter that has come on here, and how different is it reporting during these times?
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's strange in general, like for everybody. I know I talked to a lot of my colleagues and stuff who just some are having an easier time than others. I mean, I do a lot of my work and video stuff online anyways, but I mean, for the reporters and stuff that don't have access, and you're just seeing it on Zoom, it's just not really the same. And I think we're also seeing that just kind of in the product as well. Like it's harder to get engaged when the fans aren't in the building and stuff. It's more of like a distant kind of thing where it's just not really the same, right? So I'm definitely looking forward to the days that it comes back. I mean, I do think a lot of the teams in the league are doing a good job with the media. Like they're still like putting out all the press conferences online and all the video and all of that, but it's definitely not the same for anybody.
Obviously we're in the Canadian division. It's different. Probably won't be sticking around for too much longer. But do you have any predictions? Who's going to finish at top? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with my so I had preseason. I, much like a lot of other people, I had the Leafs on top. I just think they've looked so good in the early goings, and the level that Matthews and Marner are operating at. But I also had the Habs as my sleeper, and I really liked what they're doing and the roster they've put together. But I still think the Leafs are going to edge them out and take the North Division crown.
And who do you think makes the farthest in that division?
Man, that's tough. I do think it's going to come down to that series, that final series, and it's going to be Toronto, Montreal.
Yeah.
And because every year I'm kind of like that guy that's like, okay, this is the year the Leafs get over the hump in the playoffs, because they're just known for being such a great regular season team. But I actually kind of believe that this will be the year, because I like some of the pieces they put together with like Wayne Simmons, Thornton. I like the blue line additions of like TJ Brody. So I do think the Leafs are going to make it out to that Final Four.
All right.
Oh, sorry, Shay, but also obviously Austin Matthews has been. You mentioned he's been on a torrid pace.
Yeah.
Do you have any predictions for? And Connor McDavid too. Do you have any predictions for how many points, how many goals these guys finish with?
Oh man, it's tough to nail like specific numbers. Like,
Yeah.
is a good enough prediction? Matthews, Rocket Richard, McDavid, Art Ross. is that too easy? I mean, I don't know. Like, yeah.
So do you have an over under like maybe 35 goals for Matthews kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm like not a good like math guy, so it's like how I always look at it is like over a full season. So it's been a bit of adjustment for me to like calculate the totals for like this shortened season. So I'm not 100% sure on that.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. It's definitely different.
Just speaking about point totals, I mean, Elias Pettersson's off to a kind of a slow start for his standards. You think he can probably heat up and try to get himself into the Hart conversation if the Canucks somehow get out of the slump? Because if there's any player that can do on the Canucks, it's him.
Yeah, I think he can. He can heat up. Just because the season is much shortened. I really don't like his chances of, I think, getting into the Hart Trophy conversation, just because of the fact that I think we're almost like a quarter of the way through the season already. And there's some players like McDavid and Draisaitl who are just on another level. But I think for Pettersson, that there's no doubting that the skill is there. It's just the fact that he got off to a slow start, and then you look also at the opposition, and you've got some really good teams and some good goalies here, right? With Montreal, Carey Price, Winnipeg, Connor Hellebuck, Calgary, Jacob Markstrom, just elite netminders, right? So
yeah,
the Canucks do face like the Senators, right? So the Senators are the team that's kind of the bottom of that division, and that's where I think, Pedersen can thrive, and I'm sure he will get back on track in general, because he's too good not to against, every other team in the division. But I'm going to make a prediction that he won't be in the Hart Trophy conversation at the end of the year, but I do think he is going to produce more as the season goes on, and yeah, he'll figure it out. I'm not too worried about him.
And how about Brock Besser? I mean, this is a guy last year that didn't really have the best season. He was in trade rumors. I think at one point the rumor was that they would trade him for Matthew Dumba and keep Toffoli instead. Obviously, that didn't happen, but I mean, it's good to see Brock just regain his confidence and have a bounce back season because obviously his father's still ill. And I mean, for Brock himself, it just gains a lot of confidence that he has his game back.
Yeah, it's huge for him. Brock, he's just a pure goal scorer, right? He knows how to put the puck in the net, and I think that's a huge asset for Vancouver. And yeah, he had a bit of an underwhelming season by his standards last year, and to come out of the gate just guns blazing and just be such a huge part of the offense is exactly what he needed and what Vancouver needed. And unfortunately, the rest of the team hasn't been able to support that. But yeah, I'm definitely really like the element that Besser brings, and I think we've even before this season we saw his chemistry with Pedersen is just, it can be unbelievable, right? And especially he's a huge asset on that first power play unit as well. So yeah, I'm really happy for the season that Brock's had. He's had some tough times of late, so still a very young player with a very bright future, and he's going to be huge for the Canucks moving forward.
And just one thing about Hoglander, I mean, he's been hit. This is like the fourth straight year where a Canucks rookie has just been killing it, and he's off to a pretty good start. But man, last night that injury did not look good at all with all that blood. So, is there any update on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it looked awful, but I mean, these are hockey players, they're so tough and they just come right back out there. I think he just got a big gash. That's pretty much it. He's not going to miss any time or anything, but he's been such a fantastic addition. I think when you look at the Canucks, he's the one guy that's like working the hardest, or like one of the hardest workers out there. Like every shift, he's just competing. Like it doesn't matter that they're losing and like some of the team looks disinterested. He's just working his tail off out there. That's huge. That's what you really want from a rookie. I mean, he's making his mark already. Yeah. And yeah, he's gonna be fine after that nasty injury.
Do you think that's like a trend with a lot of rookies, because they obviously want to make their cement their spot in the league, in the team, in the roster? Do you think that happens a lot with rookies, that they just come out guns blazing because they need to try hard to stay in?
Yeah, it just kind of depends on what type of player it is, right? Like if you're a first overall pick or like second overall or a top pick, you pretty much know that like you're in this team's future plans, right? Yeah. So I think for a guy like Alexis Lafreniere, he got off to a really slow start actually, and now he's starting to kind of find his game. And then like the last top pick, Jack Hughes, did not have a good rookie year at all, right? But this year he's been a lot better. So I think each case is different, especially I think anytime like a rookie that's not penciled in to a lineup, like they're going to work hard, right? And I think like that's what Nils Hoglander has done. Like he wasn't really guaranteed a top 6 role by any means this season, but that's what he's earned with his effort.
All right, well, I don't think anyone really has anything else to ask. Do you have any just closing thoughts before you send it off?
Closing thoughts. Yeah, I mean, I just want to say that I think, in terms of, it's been a little bit of a crazy year with the COVID.
Yeah.
And we see all these postponed games, and I just want to say I hope for the best for the NHL, because I know the North Division looks great, but some of these other conferences look like they're in trouble, right? So I just hope we can finish the year.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Brady, for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries, guys. I had a lot of fun. And I thank you guys again for asking me and bringing me on.
All right.
Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.